Real estate or stocks?
Real estate.
Buy or rent?
Buy. The government has done nothing for Alibaba.
Right.
And it's the individual people like you and other developers and others and individual owners who have created Alibaba over.
Right.
So even like Powai, when I got in, government had done nothing. They did it subsequently.
Right.
Like Thane, when we did Hiranandani estate there, government was doing nothing, but they did subsequently when they realized so much development will take place.
Price per square foot of the first flat you sold in Powai?
450 rupees a foot.
Current price of the last flat that you sold in Powai?
42,000 rupees a foot.
Good God.
Let's look at a person who bought Lake Castle 30 years ago. He bought it at a price which was 850 rupees a square foot.
Wow.
One of the best buildings in Powai at that time. Today, the resale in that building is 42,000 rupees a foot.
Good God. That's about 50x. I'd like to present to you the Amitabh Bachchan of real estate, Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani. Thank you so much, sir. Hi guys, I'm super excited about this episode of the Real Estate Show with Mayank because today's guest is very special and needs no introduction. In fact, when I started my real estate career 12 years ago, I wanted to be exactly like him when I grow older. He's a true real estate tycoon and a self-made real estate billionaire. He started making smart cities before we even knew what smart cities were. I'd like to present to you the one and only, the Amitabh Bachchan of real estate, Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani. Thank you so much, sir, for taking your time from your very hectic schedule and gracing us with your presence and mentoring me and the other youngsters unknowingly, throughout these years.
My pleasure, actually. Happy to meet you and also the people who watch your show. I'm so happy to be with them.
Lovely. Thank you so much for your time. I've realized, sir, you're very popular with the youth. Are you aware of that? I'm sure your social media is a testament of that. But since you're probably so full of life, chirpy, approachable, you're extremely popular with the youth. And that's why we got you something from our side. Pardon me for this, but we had to get you chocolates because that embodies your youth.
Thank you.
I made it a point to get you chocolates.
Thank you. These are too many, but I love it. Anyway,
so young at
thank
heart.
you.
And so this is our green initiative.
Okay, thank you. That's lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great environment, by the way, in Panvel. Initially, when I was speaking to your team, I thought we'll be called to Powai. And when your team said, Mayank, we have to shoot in Panvel, I was ecstatic because I know that Hiranandani doesn't create history; they create geography, right? And is Panvel a Powai 2.0? What do you think?
First of all, thank you. I'm just happy to be with you on this show and talk to the youth who are interested in real estate as a business. Being a first generation entrepreneur into real estate actually meant a very, very uphill task. So when we had such an uphill task, and we know that there are so many things which otherwise would have been so easy if I knew a lot of it, which I tell youngsters today. So I am happy to share my ideas and thoughts with them, especially the youngsters, because I find that they're like a sponge. They kind of take in what I say, as differentiated from people who are probably already in the industry for many years. I don't think they want to learn, but the youngsters are all learners and all. The difference being, of course, that I'm also a learner still, and I like to keep learning, and I learn from the young people also. So I have a lot of young people around me from whom I learn new things, including social media, and the ideas of that are really very interesting and exciting. So yes, I'm very, very connected with people of all different ages, and I love to share my ideas and thoughts with them because when you share, it also reconfirms everything in your own mind.
Right.
That's one. Second, what happens is I find that the responses that I get from the young people are something which actually reconfirms that.
Right.
whatever I'm doing and creating. So all that is there. And now to talk about the projects and all that. When I took up Powai, it was a reaction to what I had done in Lokhandwala complex. I made 11 buildings.
Right.
Every time I completed the building, looked out of the window or balcony of those buildings, and I saw poor infrastructure, some buildings which were not so good opposite my building. So I made a good building and they made a building which is not good. So the people looking out of my building were looking at buildings which were not so good. The roads were not good. The infrastructure was not good. There's not good water supply, no sewage system, no stormwater drains. And I created an association of all the developers in Lokhandwala complex, of which I became a secretary. And we developed the infrastructure of the whole of Lokhandwala complex. Wow. That gave me the idea that, I want to create something where I build everything, whether it's the roads, whether it's the street lights, whether it's the stormwater drain, whether it's the sewerage. You look out of the window and you also see a Hiranandani product. And that's how the idea of the first township of Powai came into being. It was far away from the madding crowd and very far away from the city center, but that's all I could possibly get, not knowing that, that would be my future. So that was Hiranandani Gardens, Powai. Then, of course, my next step was Hiranandani Estate in Thane. Right. At that time, Thane had Godbandha Road of 2 lanes, and we were just 2 builders there, Brahmand and ourselves, on that whole Godbandha Road. Today, we only have 42 big developers on that one road. That 2-lane road, Godbandha Road, has become 14-lane. Right. It now has a metro, and there's going to be another coastal road on that road. And it came. So it just became that I went ahead in Powai, and I went ahead in Hiranandani Estate in Thane. And of course, I kept on thinking of what's the next destination which I should create. And that was how Hiranandani Fortune City land we started aggregating. We now have about 500 acres, but my target was 1,500. Wow. So I really thought that, it should be much bigger and much bigger. But after we did 400-500 acres, government started increasing FSI of all the project areas and all that. And we realized that 400-500 acres is good enough for many years and for a township. So incidentally, 500 acres means it's twice the size of Powai. Right. So when you say it's 2.0 of Powai, it's exactly 2.0 in terms of area at least. It may not be in terms of things. So we'll kind of double everything and improve everything to it. So that's the kind of story of how Hiranandani Fortune City Panvel has been, bought and started.
Something that really intrigues me is, you have about 588 acres of land in Panvel, but you acquired that in the early 2000s, right? Before Naina came into picture, before there were rumors of the airport, before all those government announcements. What vision, did you see something that others perhaps didn't see?
Well, everybody focused on the western suburbs and the extension to that, to Virar, Vasai and that side of it. I always look for new avenues where other people don't look at that in the initial stages. And I found that the eastern side had a greater future in terms of it, the Bombay Pune road, the old road, and then of course adding on to the expressway which happened. The development on this line, at that point of time, Navi Mumbai Airport, the Adani Airport was far away. Not even thought of. The MTHL bridge was not even conceived. But I realized that the central side had a great future and it was possible to do. And aggregation of that much land on the western side was a little more difficult, and there were a lot of people already competing for that land. So I picked up on this side, believing that knowing or thinking ahead of other people of what we want to do. And now, of course, after I have bought, we have a lot of company there. Mr. Adani has himself bought more land in this area, Godrej. We have Vadwas, we have India Bulls, we have Kalpatru. Lots of people have come subsequent to my acquisition. But it's nice to have company because then, it becomes a destination.
Right.
So it's working.
I guess keyword being subsequent. Subsequent. So you're
Well,
always
it's my job to see ahead of the time. If I want to create scale,
Right.
and if you really want to create a scale that you want to do, then you have to be ahead of other people in terms of identification of new areas.
Right.
So we're looking at we've taken up Panvel, and we are now got another township in Alibag,
Right.
which will be the next destination after Panvel.
Lovely, fantastic. So speaking of scale, you just spoke of scale. Like for instance, an Alibag. For example, I'm buying a land in Alibag right now, and it's going to be a small bungalow project. Our plan is to build 10 bungalows, holiday homes, and sell and exit perhaps in 3 years. But something like a 588 acre, it's a different animal. So how does your team plan the development of something that is as big as a city? Is it in phase wise? Do you all depend on the demand? Does it change? Do you have rough timelines? How does the entire planning process go?
So there are two parts to it. First of all, at the time of acquisition, you have a present position and you have a vision for what you think the future will be. But the future is never what you think it will be.
Right.
So the changes which rapidly take place is something which you got to imbibe on a continuing basis. And that change can be planned by the government. It can be planned because so much new areas have actually developed. It could be an industrial expansion. It could be a religious center. It could be an airport. It could be, a new expressway that has come out. So all these are external factors which actually affect any destination that you're looking at. The second part is creating a destination.
Right.
So what happens is that is with you, and the other developers along with you can create a destination which is very good. You talked about Alibag, for instance.
Right.
The government has done nothing for Alibag.
Right.
And it's the individual people like you and other developers and others and individual owners who have created Alibag over
Right.
it. Now maybe government will come in and really develop it.
Right.
So even like Powai, when I got in, government had done nothing. They did it subsequently.
Right.
Like Thane, when we did Hiranandani estate there, government was doing nothing, but they did subsequently when they realized so much development will take place. When we went into come to Panvel, government did nothing, but they are now doing it subsequently. And the benefit will go to the government, it will go to the other developers who come now, and they will do it. We just kind of put our legs first into it, and we take longer.
Opening the floodgates.
Opening the floodgates, and people follow us. So I guess
absolutely
we become more correct because we have good company subsequent to us entering that area. So I think it's good to have company of good developers who come with you.
Also, it must be such a big compliment that everyone else is following you. Is that like a compliment to your decisions?
I don't look at it that way, but as people say that when people copy something, that thing must be good. So if there's a design or something or a trend and somebody copies that design, it could be clothes, it could be dress ways of doing it. We copy Narendra Modi in terms of the Modi jacket that we wear. I do it too. So other people also copy. So it's a wonderful trait to follow. So it's nice to be followed, and people copy, whether it's our architecture, whether it's our infrastructure, whether it was we made probably the first clubhouse in Mumbai at that time, when we did, in 87. 87 when we did that. Nobody had thought of it. But then subsequently everybody got into it, which is good because the entire credibility of real estate developers came up, and people who follow our quality standards. It's good because then the quality of buildings in the city and country will become better. And amenities also, we've been continuously giving all the amenities, and now other developers are also giving it, So I think you start a trend, and if it is positive and good and it's copied, fantastic. I mean, I'm sure there are so many people, other people who have also done good things, and maybe I have set a trend which has been copied, And I'm sure other people also will set the trend, and
Which
we
will be
will also
further.
copy it, and nothing wrong with that.
That's very good for the industry in general.
Yes.
So if you had one option as a real estate investor, one location if you had to buy an apartment within MMR limits, what location would that be?
So it depends. What are you really looking for? Let's say, for instance, you want an established location. Obviously, you're going to look at the city centers which was there, whether it's a Powai, whether it's a Thane, or locations which are already totally developed. If you're looking at the future, like Powai was maybe 15 years ago or 20 years ago, or Thane was 15, 20 years ago, then obviously that investment into that location makes sense. So if you're looking at today, the future, where the future development will be, Hiranandani Fortune City, Panvel would be a fantastic investment. See, from a price point of view, would a price X which you're paying today become 2X in 5 years? Panvel will become 2X in 5 years, while city center prices, which are high, cannot become 2X. And still the quality of life will be great. You will get new development, new infrastructure, new everything over here in this location. And at the same time, you have got a price point which is affordable, more affordable. So I think it depends on what you want. So let's say your brother is staying around the Powai area. Obviously, you would like to be around that area, or your friends, or your job, or whatever it is. So I think both have their own things, and that is why people buy both. They also buy in Powai, they buy in Thane, they buy in Panvel also. That's it.
Your sales personnel was telling me you all have a very high referral ratio with clients, which is fantastic because the customer acquisition cost naturally decreases, and it also sort of reassures the brand that whatever they've done is, absolutely right. What's your take on that?
Well, we've delivered for 35 years, 40 years plus. Now, let's look at it this way. Let's look at a person who bought Lake Castle 30 years ago. He bought it at a price which was 850 rupees a square foot.
Wow.
One of the best buildings in Powai at that time. Today, the resale of that building, is 42,000 rupees a foot.
Good God, that's about 50x.
So a 50x on the price of what I sold the entire building at.
Wow.
Now, if you look at it from that perspective, the multiplier effect in terms of what we have created is so high and large. But so you have different products. You have a product which is already mature, and I would like to stay there because it's fully developed and worth it, and it's an address where I can show off. I stay in Hiranandani Gardens, Powai. And at the same time, you're betting on a future which is also going to be as great. We don't know the multiplier effect of it 10 years or 15 years later, but we know for a fact in 5 years it'll be double. So the question is, which one would you choose? First of all, your budget. The second, where are you investing for the purposes of investment? So obviously you would pick up an item where the possibilities of making 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x is more likely than that one. And at the same time, you secure the same brand because our commitment to the projects is equally strong, with more experience than I had when I built that building. And we continue to grow. So I think the advantage of having a track record of what we have done is the reason why people who have already bought with us, who have benefited in terms of price rise, or understand our commitment and brand. And this is applicable to every brand. So a person who's buying a car, or who's buying any material or clothes or anything, it's an established brand which actually works. So you create a brand, you live it all these years. Why do they say Tata is a brand? Because 150 years we've done it. Why is Hiranandani a brand? For 35, 40 years we have delivered. So the people are very comfortable with the brand because they are assured that the corporate entity is not here to, it's going to be a win-win situation for both of them. That's why the rebuys take place in the Hiranandani.
Right. Speaking of Hiranandani Fortune City, when we had met last time in the Diwali event for your university, for NHSRE, you told me something very, very interesting, and I was very intrigued by it. I thought about it for a couple of days, and for instance, data, just a pure black and white piece of paper, pure data. You hire someone who's done actuarial science, he does his data analysis. Data would just suggest that, okay, we should be building perhaps a 1 BHKs, more number of 1 BHKs in a location like Panvel. But you had told me that the highest kind of inventory that got sold in this project were actually 2 BHKs and 3 BHKs. And we do definitely understand that Hiranandanis are outliers in that sense. But does this make your planning a little bit difficult?
Extremely difficult. I'll tell you another story. 15 years ago, I read The Economist, London.
Right.
And there was an interview with I think the king of Saudi Arabia, or the oil, whoever was the girl, and he was the chairman of OPEC.
Right.
And the price of oil was $25 or $30, I don't remember exactly. And he was questioned. He said, in 2 weeks, 3 weeks' time, there's going to be an OPEC meeting where you're chairing it. And what's likely to be the price of oil in that meeting going to be announced? So he said, I don't know the exact price, but the price will rise by another $7 or $8. And in reality, at that day, when the meeting took place, the price fell by $5. Wow. So many times when we predict from our experience and knowledge of what we do in terms of the past. The second is to predict the future. When you predict the future, you may not be always absolutely correct.
Right.
In anything that you do, including elections. You don't know what the numbers are going to ultimately be. So what it really works? You work because you know that your experience tells you the direction in which your expectations will be. But the reality is going to change completely. So in the case of what we did last year, and we launched 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom, our expectations in 1 bedroom sale was a disappointment. In the respect of 2 bedroom, we were shocked. It was like 100% more than what we expected. As far as the 3 bedroom is concerned, also we had a great sale. So suddenly for the next round of people, the marketing people said, change the building design, get it reapproved, and really do more of 2 and 3
It's a
bedroom.
good problem to have, I guess.
Not really. You don't want to make changes. It's not an easy problem to solve. Let me be honest with you. But the point was that when you predict the future, you remember it's just a prediction. Predictions go right and wrong. And even after 40 years of experience, you can be wrong in terms of your prediction. But the direction is correct. So we had a large number of 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms also. But on the day of the sale, at the time when we took place, the market changed completely. And obviously, for the present, it is going to be there. Again, I tell people that don't be carried away too much by this thought. Because even today, 65 to 70% of the sales in India is 1 bedroom affordable segment.
Right.
So yes, this segment has grown humongously in the last 2 years, which is the mid segment and the luxury segment. Both have grown humongously. The affordable segment has not grown at all in this period. So comparatively speaking, the mid and the luxury segment has grown. But don't forget, the lower segment is the bread and butter of Indian real estate.
Right.
And those who forget that will miss out that also.
Right.
It's only that we are into this portion of time where this segmentation is actually growing faster. There will be an exhaustion there because ultimately there is a limit to the kind of people and number of people who can really do that. So the future, let's see.
Do you attribute COVID and the coronavirus to the fact that people perhaps wanted larger spaces, and which is why they opted out for the 3 BHKs and 2 BHKs in this particular project?
Yes and no. Yes, because during the COVID period, we were in the house. Normally, we are only at the working place. So they were in the house when they were working.
Right.
Children who were going to school were at home.
Right.
The spouses and other people had to do whatever they had to do from home. So suddenly they realized the importance of home. And even over weekends, people would go shopping, they would go travel, they would go for holidays or whatever it is. So they were not at home. They would be elsewhere. So the point is very simple that yes, COVID did affect it. But is COVID the only cause for this to happen? The answer is no, obviously not. Because affordability has gone up, GDP of the country has gone up, income levels are gone up. The thought idea that I'm willing to spend more, banks and financial institutions are ready to lend monies at easily to this segment also. They have more confidence because NPA in this segment is hardly less than 1%. So all in all, what we see is that COVID did have an influencing factor, but I think the wealth of people and the willingness of people to spend, they also spend on holidays much more. Right? They spend on luxury items much more. Is that a COVID influence? The answer is yes, but not completely.
Right.
The wealth of people have also gone up. Their incomes have gone up. That's why they're able to spend more. So it's both.
Right. Coming to how real estate has evolved over the years, you've seen 4 decades of that evolution. What is your take on the difference? Earlier it used to be product centric. Like you said, you made the first clubhouse. It was like a very product centric approach. Nowadays, every A+ builder will give a clubhouse, give amenities, give the bare necessities that now an end customer requires. So do you think that customer centricity is now picked up over the last 4 decades in terms of in real estate?
So first, let's talk about the product.
Right.
Earlier, what happened is if you buy a cheap product, you thought the quality of the product would be rubbish. Right. All right. So in the real estate field or in any other field, if you do, सस्ते में लिया तो कैसे चलेगा, उसका quality कैसे रहेगा? So that is it. In the field of real estate, that was the truth. That you bought cheap and you bought rubbish, and people were critical about how the whole thing was there. And so it was in the marketplace. You bought a cheap scissor, it won't cut. Or you bought a cheap anything, a cheap TV, a cheap anything, you did. And you bought it there. What has changed? Over a period of time, you buy a cheap car. Is the quality bad?
No.
So you buy a car which is a Maruti, but the quality of the Maruti is excellent. It's a cheap car. Right. So cheap is not bad quality. You buy a Mercedes-Benz on the other hand, you're paying high, it's good quality. You take for granted it's good quality, but you're buying cheap, even then it's a good quality.
Right.
So the changes which have taken place in the marketplace, you buy a phone, you find different types of phone. The type of configuration and other things would be different. But in reality, even a cheap phone works to the extent it is. It's not bad quality cheap phone. It just may have less gimmicks or availability of this thing. Real estate is going in that direction, wherein people who buy cheaper things will not accept bad quality. And that is where RERA has been very, very useful. So what has happened with the government coming in, people who thought that I can sell a cheap quality by cheating the customer is going away.
Right.
And there is a consolidation in the marketplace for that purpose. So earlier, bad quality was a norm. 85% of the people who were in real estate would tell lies, cheat in areas, cheat in this, cheat in that, and whatnot, and get away with it. Today, because of RERA, because of the situation, you can't make this. And now they're talking about, RERA is even going to talk about quality. The difference is, we talked about quality 35 years ago. We are not talking about it now. Luckily, the whole market is now talking about the quality. So now, even the smallest developer is trying to / forced to make quality. Right. Because now the market is not going to accept bad quality. So over a period of time, these changes are taking place. Bad quality in the marketplace, good quality as far as this is concerned, will be the norm. So what does the brand mean? The brand means commitment. Brand means reliability. Brand means quality assured. Brand means that the chances of you going wrong are going to be much less. So all that, the brands itself will work out itself. But it doesn't mean that the other people will not be there in the market. The country is so big.
Right.
You're going to have small builders, middle-sized builders, large-sized builders, branded builders, unbranded builders, corporates which are there, listed, unlisted, privately held. All sorts of development will take place. Country is very big.
Right.
So I think that is something which you will continuously see in the marketplace as to what is happening over here.
Right. We've seen, you're also very active on social media, and I'm sure we've seen enough finance influencers talking about buy versus rent. Is such a popular topic right now. They'll pull out an Excel sheet and do their mathematical calculations. What is your take on this topic? Should you buy? Should you rent? Let's hear it from the horse's mouth.
So I recommend very, very strongly that everybody must buy a house. You will not even stay in the house that you have. But this house is a very strong and important thing to buy. You get today, for instance, income tax possibilities. You are getting loans which are availability over there. And to accumulate that type of wealth for any common person is almost impossible in any other segment that you can possibly think of. And second, there's a social security. Over a period of time, there could be depreciation of the rupee, and your rentals could go so big that when you are actually in the retirement age, you can't afford to buy a house or even afford to pay the rent in the place where you want it, because the rents would have shot up and gone off the roof. So my recommendation to every person is buy a house, a small house, not necessarily in the place you want to live. You can even stay on a rent or stay with your parents or stay wherever you want, but actually accumulate enough this. It's an automatic savings mode for them. A lot of benefits come from the banks and financial institutions, and also income tax benefits are there. So that accumulation is almost impossible to do. Second, of course, your job may require you to stay somewhere else. Right. Today you're in Mumbai, tomorrow you're in Delhi. You can't keep on buying houses everywhere. It's not possible for anybody to do it. So yes, you can have a house in ABC. You give that out on rent. So it would be a safety thing which I think you need to do. And the benefits far accrue just not buying a house. So it's my personal recommendation to everyone that who should buy a house in their lifetime and make savings for the purposes of doing so.
Right. And I think especially, so just to add to your point, in a country like India, where the government is really trying, all right, but there's just so many of us, there is nothing like welfare as opposed to the Western countries.
Yeah.
In your upside, I saw a very good and interesting interview the other day where an influencer was talking about, in your upside, you're obviously going to pay tax to the country, but in your downside, if there's no welfare, where do you go?
Absolutely. So we don't have adequate social security for the middle class or the other class. For the lowest, the poorest of the poor, the government has already started social security in terms of giving rations, in terms of giving gas, in terms of all the other things. But if you look at the middle class and the upper middle class or whatever, I don't think that is still in the vision of the government as yet. So I think if you don't have a house over a period of time, it's going to be a little difficult in your retirement age. Right. So I recommend that very, very strongly. But it doesn't mean you have to stay in your own house, because there's a possibility of renting that out. And wherever you're working, suppose your working place is different, you can go there and rent wherever it is to be there. So you have the social security of a house, which is your own and sufficient. And you also can live wherever you want.
Right. Over the last decades, we've seen real estate evolve in terms of different asset classes. Residential, of course, they're ruling the roost. But what about other asset classes like warehousing, co-living, fractional ownership? What is your take on that, and what are you personally bullish about, apart from the real estate sector?
So through the country, it's always going to be residential, which will be evergreen. So no matter what you do, residents will never, never, never die, because you may have any other field that you have. So every place may not have commercial, Every place may not have retail. Every place may not have all the other aspects of it. But residential will always rule the roost.
Right.
Forever.
Forever.
And this is not for India.
Right.
Every country in the
Worldwide.
world, you name the country and as a country.
Right.
Then we come to location specific. Different locations will have different opportunities. So some will have commercial opportunities, some places where IT focus is there, some places where you can do malls or this part. Then we come to the next part, which is holding of these assets. How do you hold the assets? You can either buy that asset, or you can buy a REIT portfolio which gives you income, which you can buy a fractional ownerships now under the new policy which is now being announced. So all these are innovative methods by which you own real estate but don't hold it directly in your name. You hold it through a different thing. So for instance, you hold shares of real estate. So you're into real estate, but actually you don't own it at all.
Correct.
So similarly, a fractional ownership doesn't give you a right to go and stay there.
Right.
So that's not there. But you own real estate.
Right.
That's an investment. So two different aspects of it completely. One is owning it and then doing it. So I do believe that residential is perennial. But from an income perspective, there are many areas where commercial is now coming up, and international investors have focused more on commercial side.
Yes.
That's why the REIT portfolio is being created, because that's the outlying thing where the end destination is a REIT.
Right.
Even if they have investors who come in, the big guys who come in and invest into these portfolios, they are more interested in this because they get continuity of income. But first is residential, second is commercial, third is to do it through investment portfolios, which could be a REIT, which could be invested into shares or any aspects of it. These are three different segments of investments into real estate.
I would like to share an anecdote with you. This was back in 2014. I had started off with real estate brokerage, and I cold called a client, and I asked him that, so are you looking for an investment? I have this so and so residential property, and he was very sharp spoken. I still remember the conversation I had with him. He's like, commercial mein hai kya kuch? And I said, sir, nothing in commercial. He's like, give me something in pre-leased with a bank. And at that time I didn't understand the depth of his requirement. And I asked him, why do you want something in commercial? He's like, see, we'll get in residential, give me 2.5% rent. In commercial, I will get about 6.5, 7. And if you have something in warehousing, even better, I'll probably get even more. And I didn't have any commercial pre-lease requirement, supply with me at that point of time. Neither did I have any warehousing supply with me. So I had to let the deal go. But that taught me that, okay, there is this other asset class that, perhaps gives a much higher rental. What is your take purely from an investment point? Somebody who wants a rental yield. Can you talk about the pros and cons of warehousing investing?
So, three segments that you talked about: residential, commercial, and warehousing. Each are different animals.
Right.
Residential may give you a lower rental relief, not necessarily in every place, but it does. As an average, yes. But the possibility of resale is very fast.
Yeah.
So you suppose tomorrow a residential flat is there with you and you want to sell it, it's much easier as compared to a commercial. Commercial can take a long time or years before you sell it. It's not so in the case of residential. The second, we talked about commercial, the portfolio that this investor wants to do. It gives you a continuous yield, which is a higher return at 6%, 7% or whatever. That is exactly the reason why international investors go in for A-grade properties, which are rental, which can be leased, or they arrange the lease, or it's pre-lease. There are a large number of investors who get into it, but they are profiled as investors. They are not in a hurry ever to sell. So for them, keeping an investment like that may be in perpetuity, or even will it to their children. They are never in a need that I will have to sell it because of a marriage, or I'll have to give it to my child to go and stay in that. So, which you can do with a residential. You can't make your child, gift a child to their commercial property to go and stay in it. Right. So the hard part of it is that if I want to keep 2 flats for my children, then I would buy residential, I wouldn't buy commercial. But if I had a portfolio of investments, then maybe a commercial would be looking more in thing. If you don't have the profile where you need to create liquidity very quickly. Warehousing is even more complex. More complex in the sense that this A-grade properties which have now come into it are very concentrate in certain areas and development, and requires a very professional way to go into the A-grade warehousing segment. But there is a next level of warehousing which is there, where individual people who have got plots of land prepare warehouses and give it on rent. They are a different category completely, because they are kind of small mini investments that have taken place. So in warehousing, two different categories. The smaller ones who really do the warehousing for individual portfolios, which a lot of people are wanting to do and are doing, whether they are landlords or developers. And the others where there are very high companies which do lakhs of square feet of doing of professional A-grade doing. We as a company also in Greenbase, which is a warehousing platform with Blackstone as a partner, we do warehousing into that. But that's a different thing completely. It's not something which normal people would be able to do in terms of the top grade. And ultimately, the idea of this is to go into an IPO or into a REIT or something like that after a couple of years of consolidation of such properties.
Right.
So these are different categories of investments. One which is social security for your house. The other is an investment, normal investment portfolio. And the third is a specialized portfolio.
Right. You spoke of Blackstone, and that was going to be my next question. We've seen, again, in terms of evolution, we've seen real estate funding also evolve. Now we have giants and fund houses like Blackstone getting into strategic partnerships, with A-grade developers. What is your take on that? Because
they are large capital inflows which come into India, which is FDI, and we find that the world has a lot of money. Some of these companies are interested in investment into India, and Brookfield and Blackstone are two of the largest investors into India in the real estate field, and of course they have other investments also. We do see their investment looking at it in terms of opportunity of growth. With India now growing at 7% plus, which is the fastest growing nation in the world, these companies are interested in investment because we are now building national highways. We have we've brought GST, we have done away with octroi. So they see niche opportunities in the commercial and warehousing space in the next couple of years. And their focus of bringing in this money is to get a high return ultimately, which they have, and they have proved that investment into this line is there. But they're very specialized companies, and they have a lot of ear to the ground and understand how this business is to be done. And good investors worldwide. I mean, they do investments in New York City or London or Middle East or China and Far East and all these countries. And it's good. We learn a lot from them.
Right. We've also seen big A-grade developers now, because real estate's always been such a hyper-local subject. But when they're expanding pin codes or getting into new pin codes, we've seen them collaborate with the regional players of that particular pin code rather than trying to eat up the entire pie. What is your take on that strategy?
See, land is a very localized subject, irrespective of anywhere in the world. Right. People who specialized in New York City don't go into tier 2, tier 3 cities, even in America.
Yeah.
They are super specialized in this particular segment. Secondly, let's take the case of India. Land is a state subject, so the regulations are different. As far as Maharashtra is concerned, there used to be separate DC rules for every city.
Right.
Now they've unified DC rules. And so there is some sort of unification which has taken place. But go into different states, the regulations in different cities and planning authorities are so varied that it takes a long time to learn the nuances of the rules and regulations, the markets in a particular city, the methodology in getting the permissions, and also to actually look at and understand the markets in every location. So tying up with a local developer makes a lot of sense, and that is exactly what has been done even by the Brookfields and the Blackstones of the world, they have tied up with a lot of local developers in terms of doing it. And they've done it not in India, but all over the world. So I think that's the thing which happens, especially in the real estate side.
What is your take on self-redevelopment? Now we already know redevelopment is the present and perhaps the future of at least Mumbai real estate when there is no land. But do you see self-redevelopment becoming a competition for developers?
Anything is a competition. Competition is good for the real estate field.
Right.
So I think the self-redevelopment will take place. I don't think at this present time, I don't think more than 5% of the redevelopment will take place in the self-redevelopment way. 5 years later, 10 years later, we don't know what the opportunities will be. And maybe there will be more consultants or management companies which will assist them to do self-redevelopment. I think it's just one more opportunity to look at the difference. So self-redevelopment has taken place. But as far as I know, in the whole city of Mumbai, not more than 10 have actually fructified.
Right.
So, I mean, the numbers, when you have 10,000 others and you have 10 which have taken place, it's a very small number as of today.
Right.
But hopefully tomorrow there will be self-development. Nothing wrong with that.
Right. My next question would be about, I will just, start that with a story. I was talking to a fresh graduate. He had just graduated as a civil engineer. And I was talking to him. He wanted some, he was just asking me something, about real estate. And I asked him that, don't you want to get into now, into a construction business? You want to become a builder? He's like, no, not at all. I want to start an AI tech startup. And I asked him, why is that? Like, you're a civil engineer. You've done well in your university as well. What's the reason? He's like, Mayank, in real estate, it'll take me 4 or 5 years to build one, very good building. But in AI startup or something like in this tech field, there are a lot of players who are coming in, raising funds, making their companies into unicorns in 4 or 5 years and exiting, where here I can only make one building. So do you see the product life cycle of real estate being a deterrent for youngsters trying to, enter the industry?
Obviously, whether you take up real estate or anything which requires development of infrastructure and all that is going to take time. Manufacturing of cars will take time, but creating an Uber requires zero asset base. Uber or an Ola is zero this thing which is there. An e-commerce business doesn't require any hard assets.
Yeah.
So if you're marketing FMCG goods or you're marketing food, delivery part of it, you don't own any hard assets at all. So what he's saying is absolutely correct. And if you get opportunities in the real estate, it's just one more opportunity. Mm-hmm. So the e-commerce business and the startup and the tech business is an opportunity which has come up. And that does not mean that the hard business disappears. The hard business continues. But he's right. I mean, nothing wrong in the tech business taking over. And I'm sure that lots of younger people are going to continue to do the tech business and be of service and make money out of it.
Absolutely.
Great. Absolutely.
Speaking of tech, when VR first came out, we all thought VR will change everything, it'll disrupt the entire industry. But in the last 7 years, at least, we haven't seen it change the industry to the extent that we thought it would. It's still a touch and feel asset in the end of it. What is your take on that? And are you pro that implementation?
No, VR was just one of those meters. Today, about 25% of my sales takes place through VCs. Right. They don't even come to the sites. And there are people internationally who buy from us and they are not even visitors. They may send a relative or friend just to have a look at the site. But in reality, their decision taking place is already done through the website, through an interaction on VC and other places. So that change has already happened. I mean, the hard asset is a hard asset, but this is there. So you want to buy a car, you're going to check up 20 cars, and then ultimately you'll go and see that 1 or 2 cars which are there. Right. So I think social media, the ability to go through the website or the VCs, go to social media to find out what are the reports of other people who have bought the apartments enough information is available. So I think I'm very clear that both are important. Your hard asset, which you are constructing and selling, is important, and the site is important. Like we are here today in Hiranandani Fortune City, as well as the website and interaction through social media and other things which is there, and also my interaction with you, for example, is gives information to hundreds and thousands of people. So we can't not have the hard asset when you're building in hard assets and selling, and you cannot undermine the ability of being able to do it through, VR didn't work out, but that was just one instrument.
Right.
You can't rule out, the internet, the social media, and the website, and all these things to do it. So I would say VR didn't work out, but the others are working.
Right. So coming to construction technology, what is your take on 3D printing? Do you see a lot of 3D?
Great future. It is going to happen. The cost of it has to come down. Right. It also has to be able to do multi-storied housing at the same way it is doing low-rise construction. It is very good for mass construction, fast construction, quick construction. Today, the cost and benefit is not suitable for us at this point of time. But I'm sure in another 5 years or something, this will happen. In construction, the technologies have changed already. We use Maivan, we use tower cranes, we use other materials for walls, for other things which we are doing. We're constantly improving the technology in terms of construction. I think in the next 5 years, you will see prefabricated houses which will be made in the factories. They'll just come and be assembled on the sites. Right. So the cranes will just take the parts and just put up, and maybe like in China, they've done, make an entire building in 60, 90 days.
Ridiculous,
so I won't be surprised if this happens in the next 5 years, as quickly as that. But the question is effectiveness of that technology, the cost effectiveness of it, and the ability to be able to make it viable in different locations. So different type of locations require different type of technologies to do it. So let's say some place which has heavy rains will require different type of technology for the purposes of construction, and where the dry climates, you may have different things. Look at Dubai. They didn't need to make drains, stormwater drains, because there was no rain. All of a sudden, climate change has brought rains over there. They have no drains.
Right.
So now they will make all the drains. But what I'm trying to say is that the technology is definitely an in thing. Whether it will be A technology or B, or it will be precast construction or 3D printing, I don't know what is ultimately going to come up. But one thing I know, new technologies in construction will be there in next 5 years.
Right. So, so I started my career in real estate in 2012, and I started off in land acquisition in rural parts of Maharashtra. Done areas like Murbad, Shahpur, Karjat. And, as a youngster fresh out of college, I got scammed. There's so many times my tokens would just be, I had to just let go of my token amount. Probably 4 months down the line, some sister would come out of the woodworks and, demand money. It was just a shady business to begin with. Now, obviously, with making a lot of mistakes, we're doing okay. But do you think land, records, the digitalization of those records with blockchain can drastically change this?
100%. It's a direction which had already come up from Niti Aayog, and we've also recommended it. It has been started. They are working on it, but it's just not happened completely in the country. So yes, it will happen. I thought it will happen 15 years ago,
right,
but it's still not happened in the way by which everyone's title is absolutely clear, and certainly not in the agricultural side.
Right.
So, but it has to happen if you want efficiencies, ease of doing business, less scams, as you talked about. This is bound to happen. Unfortunately, it's not happened quickly enough, right, and we hope that in the next couple of years, government will take steps similar to what they did in RERA. They need to do, right, in terms of titling.
Do you think someday you could, perhaps just to add to that previous question, Do you see people, say 20 years down the line, just buying agricultural land like how like online through auctions or through, with everything being so streamlined?
So answer is yes. Why not? If you can buy online apartments today from a developer because of RERA and other things which are there, you're protected. Why not in terms of land also? So as long as we realize that we need to do it, government can do it. With technology, it's so easy to do it. And it does need a direction from the top that we want to do it. And I think, look at the Aadhaar card. I mean, it's just amazing.
Fantastic.
Opening of bank accounts, amazing. I mean, direct money transfer, amazing. These are they're a million times more difficult than land titles. Land titles is a much easier subject than that. But I think we just not done it yet.
Right. Why haven't green buildings taken off in the residential segment? As we keep talking about sustainable development, being environmentally, conscious, but we don't see too many residential green buildings out there. Any particular challenge, and what should be a policy change, a recommendation, something the government should probably follow and incentivize? How can the government incentivize developers?
So both are already there.
Right.
It's only that it's not getting done.
Right.
We made green buildings 30 years ago.
Right.
We made energy effective buildings. We made green areas. We did recycling of water. We do 4 million liters of recycling of water in Powai and in Thane. 4 million liters per day recycling. And we have done this 30 years ago. So obviously we have green buildings there, energy effective buildings are there. A large number of them are already rated, even the residential buildings and the commercial building. So we are already into it. Government has made many of these green ideas mandated, and they have now created certification in respect of that. Slowly but surely, it will become a mandate. The Prime Minister is already giving that direction. I think sooner or later, all government buildings will also be green buildings. So that will be a good thing to start with. And ultimately, it will get mandated. But people thought it was cost ineffective. In reality, we find that it is cost effective, because the energy cost of savings which take place over the next 5-6 years recovers that additional 10% cost which is there, which increases because of making a building green. So it's not about the cost alone which is there. It's about the idea that we need to do it, and it is cost efficient and cost effective to do green building. And it will happen. So, how much time frame within which it will happen is difficult to state. All these things sometimes take longer than what we want, and sometimes it takes quick.
Right. So real estate is definitely a very opaque industry in general. And it's a great initiative that you've taken with NHSRE. And it's been a real privilege for me to be a part of that as a visiting faculty. But why did you think of coming up with formal and informal education in real estate for both blue collar and white collar jobs? When did you first think about it?
Well, thought about it long back, but really did get a chance to be effective. Skilled labor is so short. I'll give you a story. Say 15 years or 20 years ago, when I wanted 100 skilled workers, I'd get 200. Today, when I want 100 skilled workers, I don't get 20. And some of them who consider themselves skilled are really not skilled. They are underskilled, and they are not really formally, nobody is formally skilled. So skilling is a big opportunity. And we think that construction labor skilling and that aspect of it is really going to be very big in the next couple of years. We can actually sort out 50% of the unemployment problem of India if we just did construction skilling, forget all the rest of the skilling. Because construction, infrastructure development is so large that you can employ at least half the unemployed people in the country, because it's growing so fast. The second part of it is the educated side. None of the colleges and formal level of education has actually taught about real estate. So when you talk about the finance field, or you become, a CA in finance, or you got some degree in finance through BCom or any other, you're really not trained for applying that's subject to real estate. Same is true for marketing. You're good at marketing because you've got an MBA in marketing, but you're not good at marketing in the domain of real estate,
Right.
which is so big. Similarly, in the case of finance, in the case of HR. Now, if you do an MBA in real estate, in HSRE or any other college which is specialized in it, you come out in the world and in a field of real estate which is so huge and demanding, and jobs are on the platter for anybody who really passes it with the understanding of it. The person starts off a life in a field of real estate which is fantastic. So education of workers, education of people who are in the real estate field, whether they are engineers, architects, chartered accountants and others, or anyone. A course in the MBA in real estate is, I think, very, very useful to people there. And industry will lap up such people very quickly.
Right. I mean, it's been great to actually sit and brainstorm and pick your head for so long. Thank you so much for your time. It was a very impactful session, and I'm sure everyone, whoever is in the industry, including our production guys, by the way, our production guys were also very excited to meet you. Shubham is a very big fan of your work.
Hi.
That is Shubham. We had I think, spoken about this 1.5 years ago, Shubham, if you remember. During a Karjat shoot, I said someday we'll have an interview with Mr. Niranjan Hiranandani. And finally, after 1.5 years of constantly attracting that thought, we finally,
Thank you.
attracted it. And got it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Means
Thank
a lot
you,
to us.
everybody. Thank you.
Real estate or stocks?
Real estate.
Buy or rent?
Buy.
Your favorite type of project?
The next one.
Price per square foot of the first flat you sold in Powai?
450 rupees a foot.
Current price of the last flat that you sold in Powai?
42,000 rupees a foot.
What was the first car that you bought?
A second-hand ambassador car. In fact, I think it was a third-hand ambassador car that I purchased.
And the best car that you currently own?
The Bentley.
One thing that you're most proud of in your townships?
Ultimate satisfaction to the person who resides or works there.
Your favorite dish of all time?
Sindhi curry.
Your favorite architect of all time?
Hafiz contractor.
If you had to describe yourself in one word,
Honest.
Dubai real estate or Mumbai real estate?
Mumbai.